Okay, first of all, I was going to say, if my little Mr. Mac, my sweetheart, if he was still alive, we'd be celebrating 60 years of marriage today, and I miss him every day. And so anyway, I was just a young teenager, and 60 years later, here I still am. So what we're going to talk about today is consistency. Consistency. It's so important to be consistent in what we are doing in our lives, particularly our recovery. I'm really going to talk about consistency in recovery because there's really, I don't believe, any recovery without consistency. And, we may do it for a while and then without sticking with it in the consistency, what happens is, we get off track and, there's a relapse. There's Gina. She's been all over the country, Ireland, and everywhere else. Good to see you, Gina. All right, so I found this quote that I liked. I think it's actually out of one of my Al-Anon books. It's about face the world, head up, and not face down. When we go around with that hangdog look and we, are all doom and gloom and all, what we do is we get consistent looking, and being depressed and blue and all that. So we're going to talk about, how last week and the week before really too, we've been talking about dreams, goals, visions, and that's wonderful. We all need a dream. If you don't have a dream, you won't have one to come true. And we all need to visualize what we want, and we need to have a passion for it. But, unless we put feet and action to those dreams, they're just going to be dreams. Nothing's going to change. Nothing changes until something changes. And so that's why consistency is so important. And so I want to get into it. It is, and I keep saying consistency is crucial for recovery. Recovery is something that you can't do hit or miss. You might get by with it for a while, but the nature of this disease, if you're not consistent with your recovery, the nature of this disease is for the brain to tell us to do things that are not very sound. And when we listen to ourselves, when we listen to our brain, instead of checking it out with a sponsor, a therapist, a safe person, what we have is we've got an idiot running the show. So this is why we have to, and we have the privilege of, in a 12-step program, that a lot of people don't have, and that is we have available to us other people that are like-kind, that are just like us, that have been through what we've been through. You try to talk about obesity or drug addiction, or you name the addiction, you try to talk to Normie about that. And if you get very deep about it, you watch them, they'll start backing off away from you because they're afraid it might be catching. They don't want to catch it from you. But if you have another addict that has the same addiction that you have, boy, they come closer and they share and you share, and we're all, and that's how we stay in recovery, is being consistent about reaching out for help and form of sponsors and going to meetings. So anyway, so consistency is what keeps our behavior grounded. It keeps us grounded. It keeps us trustworthy, keeps us predictable, and helps us to achieve sobriety on a daily basis. When my husband first sobered up, he had a sponsor that he was actually a circuit speaker, but he was anyway, he was something else. And so right after Ariel sobered up, he came down, his sponsor came down from Norman, Oklahoma, and set us down at the kitchen table. He told us a lot of things. We just read and missed it. I just read about the seventh tradition about, finances. And so he would teach us about how to use the traditions in our family. And he taught us a lot about how to use the program with the family. But one of the things he told Dario, he said, be consistent. If you're going to be an SOB, be a consistent SOB. Don't be up and down and keep your kids guessing. And he said, I'd recommend, he said, you've been an SOB long enough. Why don't you switch that and see what the opposite is and be that on a consistent basis. And when you're not, call me and I'll remind you. And so he stressed consistency. And he said, act the same way every day. With people, because we teach people, that's where I got this, we teach people how to treat us. And so anyway, that's the beauty of a 12-step program, is we get people who can guide us that are farther down the line. And, yes, I believe in therapy, and therapy is good, but sponsorship is one suffering person reaching out to another one. It's for free and for fun. And, I say add that fun on there because sponsorship programs, you can find more fun and sober fun when you get in to the program, get your family involved. Anyway, so consistency makes us grounded, it makes us trustworthy, predictable, and helps us to achieve sobriety on a daily basis. And what consistency does, it defines our character and it builds character. It defines who we are, and that consistency, when you've ever heard someone say, boy, I can count on so-and-so. When they give me their word, I can count on them. You can take that to the bank. That's a compliment to someone's consistency and them keeping their word. When you get someone that doesn't keep their word and follow through, it's impossible to reach those goals. And then what happens is our character is generally described as unpredictable, untrustworthy, and people don't want to be around us a whole lot. One of the things that we do at Shades, and so many of you have gone through Shades, we can get clients in and they just work so hard, and they work and they love us and we love them, and it's just a wonderful deal, and then we will tell them no about something. And we usually do that is on purpose. And the reason we do that is to see how they can handle no. They may have done all the work that they need to do. They may be sounding good, out in meetings and over there, but tell them no. Tell them no about something and see what happens. When they walk out the door and back into the real world, they're going to hear, do y'all ever hear no? Are you in a yes world? Does everybody tell you yes about everything? That's not how life is. So, one of the things that we do is, and I love to watch them, if they're really getting what they, if they're learning how to set boundaries, and when they hear no, if they'll set a boundary and set with that information, and then come back later and talk about it, we'll say, well, they've learned something about boundaries. Or if they don't feel attacked about hearing no, then we say, well, they're on the road to some healthy self-esteem. But, when we tell them no and they blow up and act, throw a fit and get mad at us, that is not a sign of recovery. And usually what I'd say is, well, they probably need to do another round, because that is going to tell us and should tell them and their family where they are in recovery when they hear a simple no. All right, I could go on with that for a long time. And this is the time that really will determine which direction a person's going in. When they leave here is when they get mad and say, well, I'm just going to leave. I don't want to be here anymore. Watch it, because if they're healthy, if they've gotten anything here, they'll take that in, have their feelings about it, and say, what do I need to do to change myself about this? Alrighty, inconsistent people do not succeed. If you want to not succeed, if you don't want to be successful, be inconsistent. And they don't win. They usually end up, and what they end up doing is they end up a failure. And they are consistently living a life that means that it affects their family, it'll affect their job, it will affect their community. If they do it here, you can mark it down, they're going to do it at home. And usually within the first 3 days, if they get back to their home, if they're carrying that back with them and they, go home on a pink cloud and everything's going to be wonderful, give them about 3 days and see what happens if they blow up here. And we're glad for them to, and then they can work through it if they choose to. Okay, and so recovery means being sober from all mind-altering chemicals and behavior. There is, we believe in process addictions, and process addictions sometimes are the hardest to treat. Y'all know what the process addictions are: love and sex addiction, gambling addiction, codependency. That's an addiction all within itself. But until we're sober in all those areas, and we may be sober from the substances and working on the process addiction, all this takes time. But if we're not, what that means is that we're not consistent. Okay, so what we need is, if we, for any addict, whether it's sugar, marijuana, heroin, you name it, alcohol, any addiction, what we need is a time to allow our brain to heal. Our brain has been so damaged by any addiction. People can argue about sugar. I'm not going to go into the test that I took, but some people, not all people, but some people do have that allergy to sugar. They go crazy on it. So using any mind-altering chemical affects reasoning, it affects memory, it affects language, it affects emotion. People will shake, they'll go into convulsions, they'll do, they'll run their mouth, they'll be crazy acting, all of that because their brain is healing. And they may be detoxed from whatever they were detoxing from and still have this behavior, because the brain is a delicate organ and it takes time for it to heal. But the good news is a recovering life can heal the brain a day at a time. We can get better one day, if we do the things that we need to do. So, thing that we need to do is consistency will build confidence in the early days of recovery. And how you do that is, and I'm considered an old timer. We've got a bunch of old timers over on here. And Margaret's shaking her head. Yeah, we got some old timers on here. And I don't mean, I'm the oldest one in any crowd anymore because I kind of run around with young people. But anyway, I'm not talking about, numbers of years we've been alive. I'm talking about the maturity of our program. Come the 19th of this month, I will have 37 years of recovery in OA. Now, I've been in OA since 1972. So for 13 years, I was in relapse a lot more than I was in recovery. It took me 13 years to think, in order to be in recovery, you have to figure out what abstinence is and then be absent. It really works better if you're abstinent every day, 24 hours a day. We just have to do it this day and then tomorrow and then another day. But really all we have is today. That's really what got me by was, I don't have to worry about Thanksgiving because it's, the middle of October. That's when I came home from treatment. I don't have to worry about anything except this day. But I will tell you, using any form of substance, I'm going to repeat this again, it affects our memory, it affects language, it affects emotion. And I was looking up the marijuana use. You know, we're always getting people in that, oh, well, marijuana is not addictive. It doesn't bother my brain. It enhances my brain. That is the biggest bunch of BS that anyone has ever tried to feed you, or that you try to feed someone else. It will affect the brain as much as any other chemical. And, you know, I always thought that I heard it, I don't know, that it takes 28 days to make or break a habit. I looked it up, and it really takes from 12 days to 254 days, depending on, this is with clinical research, this is depending on the person. So the average of how to break, the average of how long it takes to make or break a habit is 66 days. And I believe, you know, there's a lot of treatment centers that are going for 60 days of inpatient treatment and 90 days. And I'm wondering if that's not because it takes 66 days on an average to break a habit. I don't know. That's just food for thought. We do very good to get people to stay for 42 days or 2 weeks or 30 days. You know, as sick as people get, they come to treatment and then they go home. They're just counting the days. Anyway, a lot of that's human nature. Okay, number 3. What we need to do, and I've already said that, is build up confidence by following directions, dealing with their triggers, dealing with that mental obsession. I'll tell you, only addicts, I believe, beyond a shadow of a doubt, have that mental obsession. I've talked to normal people about it, and they look at me and they think, oh, well, let's see. Sometimes I get a hankering for ice cream, but after a while, I just forget about it. A food addict, you get a hankering for something, we hang on to it like a bulldog till we go get it, unless we're in recovery. You know, a heroin addict, well, I'm not using today, but, you know, I still have the number of my drug dealer. So it is about dealing with the triggers, what's going to trigger you. And, you know, September, we're moving into the fall, we're moving into holidays, and that's when the triggers are high. You know, and people getting ready to go home from treatment and getting back with family members. You want to know where you can be triggered the most is inside the home. And those are the people that love us the most. But when we leave, you know, to go to treatment, we have left a pattern of our life there that they have watched for years. And then we come home, if we're in recovery, that pattern is completely changed. And they haven't changed with it. And so we have to teach people. We've taught them how to treat us in the disease. We have to teach them how to treat us in recovery. And coming up on the holidays, that's hard. That is hard. And I remember after I got home from treatment and after my husband sobered up, one day we looked around. It was in December. We looked around. We were always getting invitations to go to Christmas parties. You know, my husband was in the oil business, and boy, those people are drinkers. And before he sobered up, we just got all kinds of invitations. And, you know, because he was a big spender and he drank a lot of the alcohol. And, you know, for some reason or other, and then we used to be invited to a lot of dinner parties. And after I got in treatment for my eating disorder, and he got in treatment and recovery from his alcoholism, our invitation list was lessened. People don't like to be around sober people when they are not sober, and that's sober with any addiction. And so we had to form new friends, and I'll tell you, you know, we had them, and they were all recovery friends. So anyway, the way you get past this is to notice the mental obsession. And what that is the brain, something is happening in your life that you're uncomfortable about. You've heard no, or you're not getting your way about something. And what it does, it'll trigger that mental obsession, and it will tell you, I know how you can feel better. Go smoke a joint, go take some heroin, go eat, you know. So that's what that mental obsession is, and that's when that gets set up. It is essential to call a sponsor, get out of the house, go for a walk, get to a meeting, get with the like kind, if you want to recover. And if you don't, stay in it and use. And that's, I mean, I'm not giving you permission to, but those are the choices. But I will tell you, the longer people stay in recovery, the brain begins to heal, and the months go by, and sometimes the years go by. And by using daily action, consistently, and there's people on here that do that, or they wouldn't be on this. I mean, they would, you know, there's every one of you have your, you know, there's some new people, but what they're also learning is you've got to be consistent. What we do today is today. It doesn't count for what we're going to do tomorrow, because tomorrow's not here. Today is the only day that we have. So I want to, and all of you know this, I'm sure, but for any newcomers, if you really and truly, really want to recover, you do these 5 things every day and be consistent with them. Sometimes we might get busy and not do them until midnight. It doesn't matter, do it anyway. We recommend doing prayer and meditation early in the morning. Make conscious contact with God before you make conscious contact with people, and you're less likely to mess up the day. But if you start right, you know, wake up and see your husband over there with his hair all messed up and drool coming out of the corners of his mouth, and he's overslept and all, you know, you might want to make conscious contact with God before you make conscious contact with your husband. You'll be a lot sweeter, and it reverses husbands to wives. So invite God into your day early on, and read and ask for another day of abstinence. Keep prayer simple. God knows what we have need of, and just ask Him for another day of abstinence. You get up off your knees and off your ass and read some form of program recovery material, either a meditation book, pages out of the big book, or both. Read something about recovery. And if you have time, spend an hour studying. If you don't, take 5 minutes. Read some kind of program literature. And then the big book tells us about, if you're from any religious organization, ask them about different prayers or different meditations or literature that they might have. It all comes from the same source. So, you know, God is God. And so read something inspirational every morning. So that's number 2. And number 3 is work the steps with a sponsor. And, you know, so many people will get to do that dance, that waltz, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, and never do step 4. And the work is after step 4. You've got to have the material, the information in step 4 to work 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9. So work the steps with a sponsor, and guess what? Call them on a regular basis. And if they don't give you a certain time, ask them what's convenient for them. You know, people in early recovery is, you know, self-centeredness is our problem. And a lot of times they want a sponsor to be on duty 24 hours a day. And most sponsors are in case of an emergency. We had a dear friend here. He's passed away. His name was Barney. And we all called him the happy drunk. Barney loved people and loved alcoholics, and worked at our Abilene Alcohol and Drug Council. And he would spend all of his time talking to a drunk. He loved alcoholics. One night his wife said that they got a call in the middle of the night, about 3 o'clock in the morning. And Barney just talked and talked and talked, and she just thought it was one of his sponsorees because they called all the time. Just kept talking and talking, and finally he hung up, and she said, well, who was that? Was it one of your sponsorees? And he said, no, it was a wrong number, but he was drunk, and we just got to talking. That's the kind of, that's what we need in order to carry the message, that eagerness. I mean, they were just laughing. So anyway, have a sponsor, call a sponsor. And I don't know what I put down here. I can't read my own writing, so it doesn't matter, I don't guess. So anyway, that part of number 3 is don't use. Don't use a substance at all. Number 4, go to meetings. Get with like kind. If you're have an eating disorder, go to an eating disorder, OA, EA, any of the eating disorder 12-step programs. And there's no excuse anymore for people to say, well, I can't go to a meeting. Get on Zoom. They're everywhere since the pandemic. And a lot of meetings, groups are staying on Zoom. So go to Zoom meeting, get with like kind. And if you go to face-to-face meetings, pay attention to the newcomers. Go up to them, introduce yourself, and get the telephone number and say, can I call you? Give them your phone number and say, call me. And it's not about you're offering to be their sponsor, but they need a connection before they walk out that door. And then this leads into 5. After you've done the first 4, teach this process to someone else. This includes doing things at meetings and also sponsorship. If we don't give it away, we can't keep it. All of y'all are old timers, you know this. But being consistent with their daily routine will build confidence in your ability to do what it takes to remain in recovery. You are retraining your brain. I'm going to tell you this one story, and I'm going to finish here in a minute and turn it over to y'all. This is the dangerous part of working in this business. I've been around long enough that we have buried some people in this business, recovering people that have been in the recovery business. And they get all caught up in working with other people. They get tired. They go home at night tired. They don't want to talk to anybody. And the first thing that goes is maybe calling a sponsor. The next thing that goes is meetings. There was a beloved man, and this has been, I was in my early 20s, so that's been 60 years ago or more, because I was young, 55 years. And he worked at a Big Spring State Hospital. He helped open the drug alcohol unit. They're one of the first in the country that treated alcoholics in a mental institution. He was wonderful. He poured his life into working with addicts and alcoholics, and he died of an overdose of addiction, of sleeping pills. He was tired. He got too hungry, angry, lonely, and tired. That's what we have to guard against. He was overworked, understaffed, and he was checking someone in, the story goes. And someone else had checked his meds before. When they rechecked him, what they used to call black mollies. I'm not a drug addict. I don't know what a black molly is, but they used to call them black mollies. They're very strong sedative. That bottle of black mollies was gone. And this man went to the bathroom and took them. And he died of an overdose. And that was a man that had many years of recovery in AA. He was one of the old timers. That's what happens when we stop taking care of ourselves. We can take care of others, but when we stop taking care of ourselves, this is a disease called alcoholism. It's not alcoholism. We don't get over it. We have the ism. Regardless of the addiction, we have the ism with us every day, and that's why we only get a daily reprieve, folks. So number 4 is what you're retraining your brain now, and number 4 is you begin to build trust. One of the problems with any form of substance abuse are process addictions, and there'll be a lot of people that have long-term recovery from substance abuse that's practicing a process addiction, many of them. And they think it's okay because they're not drinking or they're not using drugs. But anyway, when you have one of the problems that substance disorder causes is conflict and difficulty in relationships at home. Really? Okay. This was early in the morning when I wrote this. Duh, yes it does. It causes, and I've already put it up here, so I needed to really emphasize it, I guess. I'll tell you, addictions, substance abuse disorder affects everything, our relationships, our home life, work, and in the community. An addict of any sort exhibits undesirable and unreasonable behavior that can lead to broken trust. When we, and we can do this while sober, or not dry, not sober, but dry. We can have this, they used to call it, I guess they still do, a dry drunk. Codependents can have that. Anyone with any form of substance can be irritable, restless, and discontented. And that's when we better get ourselves to a meeting or call someone, because we are building up for a relapse. And it also will break trust in relationships. So a life in recovery is about being consistent, and it gives you the opportunity for people to trust you again. We teach people how to teach people how to treat us, and when we have been untrustworthy for so long, people do not trust us. It's going to take a while. And people early in recovery are shocked. Well, what do you mean they don't trust me? I have been in this treatment center for 40 days. Why won't they trust me? Because of your behavior in the past. You're going to have to change your behavior, improve. Don't prove it to them, prove it to yourself. It's about you deciding that you want to live an entirely different life, and that it's not about just talking the words. It's about walking the walk. The only way to build trust again is to show consistency. That's what your families watch: consistency, consistency, consistency. And in their new you, the new you, that when you begin to change, you mark it down. People are going to watch you. They're watching you. It's almost like a trap. They're watching you. And if you were to happen to relapse, I knew that wouldn't work. I knew it. And so don't make them right. If you're early in recovery, or if you're, on the path, all of y'all are on the path, be consistent and let the new you become the permanent you. The you that is forever, not just the new one that put on, and I'm not a Bible thumper, but I love the Bible, put on the full armor of God, and wear that breastplate of righteousness. Here I have gone to preach it. Sister Tennie is preaching now. But do this, and you will recover. There is no failure in this, because daily consistent action is, and you'll be going back and forth. But if you go back very often, you're going to break that pattern, and you may not ever come back out of it. But anyway, so consistency. So one more time, I'm going to say consistency is the key to sustained recovery. Relapsing back into using a substance or behavior will continue to affect your brain. And the thing about drugs and alcohol, when you relapse, let's say you are clean and sober 5 years, and then you relapse, you're not going to go back to that point that you were 5 years ago. Your brain chemistry has progressed, and when you relapse in 5 years, it will be as if you have drank every day of those 5 years. I mean, it'll hit you like that. And you'll think, oh my God, this is worse than it's ever been, because it is. You've given your brain a time off for 5 years, and once you start using again, it's like a suction, it just sucks it all back. Anyway, all right, I think I've got the point over. And remember that it will affect your brain, and it can cause problems in your health, finances, relationship. So, success doesn't come from what you do occasionally. It comes from what you do consistently. So if you want to be successful in any endeavor that you have, it doesn't matter, any endeavor, if you want to be successful, be consistent with it. And then if you kind of get off track, get right back on track. Call somebody, talk to them, and get back on track. We're perfectly imperfect children of God. We're not going to do the deal perfect. And when we don't, tell somebody and get right back on the track. All right, y'all have heard me say these words over and over and over again. I've been consistent with the words I've been saying this morning. So, how are you about consistency? Have you seen a difference? If you're early in recovery, can you see a difference by forming a habit? What we tell people when they go home from Shades is to take this day, this program that you've had, or this schedule, and by and large go by that schedule when you go home. If you've been getting up at 6 or 6:30, get up at 6 or 6:30, because you're training your brain to do that. If you go home and say, oh, I'm going to sleep all morning, you go back sleeping 10, 11, 12 o'clock till noon like you did when you were using, and you go back into those habits. The old habits start way before we pick up a substance. So consistency. Who wants to talk about consistency? Do you have it? Do you not have it? Do you want it? Have you been successful with it?